Good evening, and a very happy, joy-filled Sunday to you. May it be the beginning of a good week, Shavua Tov, in Yiddish, a good Vach. How are you? Who's in the house with us? Let us see. Sandy McMurray says Michigan is here. Adrian Smith from Columbia Falls, Montana. James Roth says shalom from Indianapolis. Melissa Eitel-Jurin says good evening from Great Neck, New York. Yehudit Sobel Shavua Tov from Florence, South Carolina. Brandon Christian Sullivan, the best time of the day, AT time. Thank you, Brandon. Sue Strauss in the house from Chicago. Sharon Frant Brooks, Lebanon, New Jersey's in the house. Steph Holin from Whippo. Stephen Giger Shalom from Dover, New Hampshire. I made it through Shabbat without any fires. That is what we've been talking about. Brandon Christian Sullivan says shalom from Knoxville. Lucy Ron Johnson, shalom from Minneapolis. Pam Friedman, Florida. Considering that I'm a Scorpio, I'd say please don't. Referring to the subject of our class today, do we kill scorpions, snakes, and wasps on Shabbos? Paula Schmidt-Klauser says shalom from Chicago. Ed Roth from Amity, Pennsylvania. Elizabeth Hunt Lucarini says hello from Tucson. Susan March from Kansas City, Missouri. Alice Gross from Baltimore. Steph Holland, I'll give my first devar in English. Gretchen Foos says Illinois is here. Muriel Romick is in from Dallas. Ruth Lang Montes, Ohio Cornfields. Steph says she's giving that first drosh on Saturday. Giving or gave? I assume you're saying you're giving it coming Saturday. May it be great. May you uplift and inspire people that you speak with. Lorraine Angela Hare says Portland, Oregon. Yelena Kurtzner, shalom from South Florida. Alice Gross, my candles were on fire. And Israel Shule, shalom from Oakland, California. And Neil is in the house from Virginia. Let us light up the darkness. Okay. And for everybody who is sick, facing any kind of physical challenge, anybody who's with us right now, if you're healing, may you have a complete and speedy recovery. Any of us who are here now who know people and who love people who need a complete and speedy recovery, let's pray right now for everyone connected to this class. May everybody get the complete and speedy recovery that they need. And let's say amen. Okay, we are in chapter 16 of Tractate Shabbos, the second volume of the Talmud. Tonight we're on Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph, page 121. We're going to cover, with God's help, Mishnas 6 and 7. This whole chapter has been about a fire on Shabbos. What happens if a fire breaks out on Shabbos? And yesterday, we finally came to understand that there's a definite difference between the attitude in Talmudic times and the law in Talmudic times and the law presently. And we discussed that it changed in medieval times. That in Talmudic times, you just can't kindle or extinguish a fire. And so that would include if a fire broke out in a home. And so we talked about, well, you can't put out the fire, so what things are you going to save from the fire? Yesterday we discussed some strategies that even in Talmudic times they would use to cause the fire to go out without directly extinguishing it. But then we saw that during the times of danger, when Jews were living among very dangerous Jew hatred in the communities of Europe, the law changed. Because not only would the fire endanger life if left unchecked, but it would invite looting and pillaging of the home. A person might defend their home, and then they might end up getting killed. It was such a danger to human life that the sages just said, forget it. Even a small fire, as soon as it breaks out, if there's any chance that it could get out of control, then we put it out. It immediately comes under that general exception to all the laws of Shabbos, which we break any of them to save a life. We desecrate Shabbos to save a life. We're going to continue in that theme today, and Mishna 6 is going to start a little bit with the question of fire and then move us off the question of fire. And Mishna 7 will as well. I'm sorry, Mishna 6 is all about a fire. Mishna 7 will start with fire and move us off it. Mishna 6 is a little bit shorter and simpler. If a non-Jew comes to extinguish the fire that broke out in the home or property of a Jew, what do we do? The Mishnah says he comes, the non-Jew sees a fire and comes to put it out. It's beautiful. What a great neighbor. When he comes, the Jew can neither say, extinguish it, thank you, nor don't extinguish it. I don't put out fires on Shabbos. The Jew says neither one. He just allows the non-Jew who came to do what the non-Jew wishes to do. Presumably, since he came to the site of a fire and he's coming to help, he'll put it out. But we neither encourage him nor stop him. And this law is different for a Jewish child. A Jewish child is similar to a non-Jew in that he's not obligated in the mitzvahs. A child who's less than 13 if he's a boy or 12 if she's a girl is not obligated in the same commandments that an adult is obligated to do. So the child, you might think, okay, so if he wants to put out the fire, he can put out the fire. But the child is different because with the non-Jew, we are not responsible whether he obeys Shabbos or not obeys Shabbos. In fact, he shouldn't obey Shabbos. Shabbos is not an obligation that falls on the non-Jew. But whether or not the child observes Shabbos is the charge of the child's parents. We are responsible for the child. So if the child comes to put out the fire, we say, stop. We don't put out that fire. Now, that's, again, in Talmudic times. Today, we put out the fire. We don't rely on a child to do or not do, nor a non-Jew to do it or not do it. We put out the fire. Rabbi Ami adds in the Gemara on this Mishna that, let's say, a non-Jew didn't come running to put out the fire, but there are non-Jews present who might help, then you cannot say to them, please put out the fire at my house before my house burns down. Again, as the law stood in Talmudic times. Because we can't ask a non-Jew to do anything on Shabbos that we are not permitted to do. That is not an end run around the law. A non-Jew can do things on Shabbos that he's permitted to do, and a Jew may benefit from that. But he can't be our agent in doing something that we would have done for ourselves, except that the law says we can't do it. So Rabbi Ami says you can say in the presence of the non-Jews, anyone who puts out that fire will have a reward, right? Not if you put out the fire, I will give you a reward. That's too direct. It's too much like creating an incentive so he will become your agent. But if you just say anybody who puts out the fire, there's a reward in it, then people can choose whether of their own volition and for their own purpose they're going to go and put out the fire. If they come anyway without hearing about a reward, we assume, again, they're not acting as our agent. They're acting because they think it's the right thing to do. They're acting of their own volition. And that's the key, that they're not acting as our agent, right? And there's the classic phrase, which many people have heard, a Shabbos goy, which would be a non-Jew that does certain tasks on Shabbos that Jews are not allowed to do. But there's definite rules for how that would work. And like the classic example is if you have a deal with with your gardener, and you just say, well, I'm going to come once a week, tend to the garden, do what needs to be done, and you'll get a monthly rate for coming once a week. Now, the gardener can come on Saturday if it benefits him to come on Saturday. It's good for him. That's a better day of the week for him. There's less traffic for whatever reason. So I haven't told him to do my garden. He's not my agent in doing the garden on Shabbos. But if it benefits him, it's okay. Jews will still kind of refrain from doing that, and if possible, do a different day so it doesn't appear that the homeowner doesn't realize that and has appointed the gardener to be his agent to specifically do the work on Saturday. But technically, that is permitted. Okay. That brings us to Mishnah number 7. And this is quite interesting. And here we're going to trace a nice line of Talmudic reasoning through. If you have comments and questions about this, please put it in the comments. And Nina will relay them to me, and I'll get to them at the end of the class. Mishnah number 7 has 3 rulings. The first one is somewhat related to fire. It says that if there's a candle and it was located in the house on Shabbos, it's the light we lit, the Shabbos candle, let's say, the Shabbos lights that we kindled before Shabbos began, so we would have light in the house. But it was positioned a little bit too close to a beam in the ceiling. Somebody, put it in the wrong place and didn't think about it. And now it's creating a situation where we're afraid that the beam might catch fire, right? Or maybe even something changed. Maybe a part of the house, collapsed a little bit. No one was hurt, but now that beam is lower. For whatever reason, there's a risk that there's something above the Shabbos light which might catch fire. So now we're permitted to take a bowl and put it above the flame and somehow steady it, create some kind of a rig, I guess, so that it'll stay there, or at least a person could hold it. We can't extinguish the fire. Right here, the fire has not broken out. It's just, this is not a Shabbos candle, but imagine if it was a pair of these that were the Shabbos candles. And we're just going to somehow position a bowl up here so that, the wood beam above it doesn't catch fire. That's preventive. It's not extinguishing. That's going to be okay. Now that we're talking about overturning a bowl over a source of problem or even danger, the Mishnah also says that we can turn a bowl over, it's a little gross, onto some feces. It's not specified where, but in the Gemara's discussion, it'll emerge that it would be some feces that was left outside, let's say in a courtyard, and more probably near a trash heap in a courtyard. And we're afraid that a small child will go near that, let's say it's dog poop that was left there, and might play with it and the child might soil its hands. And so we'll overturn a bowl over the feces so that the child won't see it or interact with it. That's permitted. And then we come to the question of a scorpion. I think it's specifically in the Mishnah a scorpion, possibly snakes as well. No, it's specifically a scorpion. So we can overturn a bowl over a scorpion so that it does not come to bite us, okay? Now, what's going on here? If we put a bowl over a scorpion, we've trapped it. And trapping is specifically one of the prohibited labors that a Jew cannot do on Shabbos. Trapping was necessary to catch some of the animals whose hides and other body parts were used in the construction of the tabernacle in the wilderness. From the construction of the tabernacle, we derive the 39 categories of labor which are prohibited to do on Shabbos. Why? Because when the children of Israel were in the desert for 40 years and received the commandments, received the Torah, and received the instruction to build a tabernacle, which was a portable temple. Eventually, it would be replaced by the temple in Jerusalem, but it was the place of bringing sacrifices. It's the absolute center of the Jewish world for 1,200 years, but even the construction of the temple, the holy temple, the center of the faith, would be paused for Shabbos. And it says that in the Torah that the commandment of observing Shabbos was repeated right after the instruction to build the tabernacle and how to build the tabernacle. And from that, our sages derive that we stop all of these kinds of work in our own lives, just as we stop the construction of the tabernacle. So trapping for sure is prohibited. But now this Mishnah says, okay, we're going to override the prohibition on trapping in order to prevent this scorpion from biting. So it makes sense because that scorpion could kill a person. So in the same way that later our more modern sages would overrule the sages of the Talmudic era because of increased danger that came to us over the course of history, and said just as we put out any kind of a fire, even before that fire becomes dangerous, even in the sages of the Talmud said we're going to overrule the Torah restriction on trapping to protect people from a scorpion bite. Now the question becomes, Well, what are the limits of this exception to the prohibition on trapping? Now the sages start to discuss it. And what's interesting is that even in the Mishna, right? So the Mishna includes all of the discussion by our sages up until about the year 200. And then the Gemara, that sort of larger part of the Talmud, which is the commentary on the Mishnah, which was compiled over the next 300 to 400 years. Even at the level of the Mishnah, there was some debate about whether it was okay to trap the scorpion, because we have recorded that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who was the editor of the Mishnah, himself said, I saw somebody trap a scorpion with a bowl on Shabbos, and I wasn't sure whether the person was liable to bring a sin offering or not. In other words, he wasn't sure if trapping with that bowl in that situation was permitted or not. So now that invites, that the sages, the Amoraim, the later sages of the Gemara, are going to open up this discussion. And as a starting point, so Rabbi said, not Rabbi Yehuda reported that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So just to set that, it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai who said, I'm not sure. So that dates it back even earlier. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was present when the temple was destroyed. And in fact, it was he who saved this incredible oral tradition that is the oral law that makes up the majority of the Talmud. That is it is the Talmud. And it was saved largely thanks to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who petitioned the Roman general who was destroying Jerusalem and the temple, that he could take the sages and relocate to the small town of Yavne and continue the rabbinic project, as it were, which now became infinitely more important because the temple was destroyed, and now either Judaism would end or the sages would redefine what Judaism would become in the absence of the temple. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was unsure about the bowl being tipped over on the scorpion on Shabbos. So that's what opens up the discussion. So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, what this means is that all harmful creatures can be killed on Shabbos. Let me just get it in exactly his language. The Mishna said we overturn the bowl on the scorpion so that it will not bite. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said all harmful creatures are killed on Shabbos. So he made it real simple. They're dangerous, we kill them. Not just we trap them, we kill them on Shabbos because they could harm us. Rav Yosef raised an objection to this teaching of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Now, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is saying that he gets from this Mishnah on putting a bowl over the scorpion to trap it. Now, this can't be his source. He's saying we kill, right? So he's going that much further. But his source is not stated. He doesn't say from where he's getting it. So now the other sage is going to say, well, where's Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi getting this teaching? So Rav Yosef said right away objects, and he says, well, no, we have a baraisa. So a baraisa is contemporaneous with the Mishnah, but didn't quite make it up to the level of being included in the Mishnah. But it's a teaching, just about as important and from the same period as the Mishnah. Rav Yosef brings a Mishnah a baraisa which says 5 creatures may be killed on Shabbos, and they are the poisonous fly that is in the land of Egypt, and the hornet that is in Nineveh, and the scorpion that is in Chadiab, and the snake that is throughout the land of Israel, and a mad dog in any place. So Rav Yosef had heard a baraisa which says, well, we don't just kill anything that's harmful, we kill these 5, you could say 5 animals or 5 categories of animals. So then the Gemara asks, well, wait a minute, this baraisa that you're bringing, Rav Yosef, with whom is it in accordance? Now, the principal opinions in the Babylonian Talmud on Shabbos very often come back to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, who had a kind of general disagreement on the approach to Shabbos. And Rabbi Yehuda says, if you're going to do something that's prohibited, even though you're not doing it for that purpose, for its normally intended purpose, it's still going to be prohibited, right? In this case, you're not killing this animal, let's say the scorpion, because, you have a strange diet and you like to eat scorpions. So you're killing the scorpion in order to eat it. You don't need the corpse of the scorpion. You're killing it just to prevent it from biting humans. It's just for the safety of the humans, not because you need the corpse. So the killing that you're doing is not for the intended purpose of killing, right? Which is to harvest the thing that you kill. Rabbi Shimon might say, Rabbi Shimon permits things which are normally prohibited on Shabbos, but which are being done not for their intended purpose. So here to say, just to make people more safe, to not necessarily to save a life, but to ensure safety, Rabbi Shimon would seemingly permit this. But it's unclear how Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon would come out on this, because it's not a clear case either way of a prohibited action not for its intended purpose. So rather than answer this question of, well, with whom does this baraisa accord? And the problem is, it says there's 5 animals. Well, are these the only 5 animals that are harmful? Are there other animals that we could kill? If so, they would presumably fall under the same permit of Rabbi Shimon. So this particular teaching of only these 5 are killed, is it, with whom does it concur? Rabbi Yirmiyah, because the baraisa doesn't fall neatly into a category, says, well, maybe we didn't get the baraisa properly. In other words, maybe some of its text, and this was all an oral tradition that at this point had not been written down and wasn't intended to be written down at the time that these baraisas and Mishnas were being taught. And so sometimes it would happen that somebody recalled a Mishnah or a baraisa erroneously. They made a mistake. All these things had to be memorized, and sometimes they made mistakes in transmitting them. So Rabbi Yirmiyah is saying, well, Rav Yosef, maybe you left some words out. Maybe you didn't get it quite right. Rav Yosef defends himself, and he says, I got the baraisa right. I believe that what Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is teaching us about we kill all harmful creatures is that if a harmful creature is pursuing us, then we kill it. And if it's not pursuing us, then we don't kill it. That's how he responds to what Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was teaching. We're still a little unclear about, well, what this list of 5, is it complete? What does it teach? What about other harmful creatures? But now Rabbi Yosef is saying, well, in terms of the whole principle of harmful creatures, maybe what it is if they're coming after us, we kill them. Because if they're coming after us, there's a reason to believe we're in danger and it's harmful to the human. If it's not coming after me, why should I believe that it's dangerous, even if I've heard that it bit other people at other times? That's what Rav Yosef offers. Now we get another teaching because we're trying to figure out, well, what is the principle? Do we trap harmful animals? Do we kill some harmful animals but not others? Do we kill them when they're coming after us but not if they're not coming after us? We don't have the halacha yet. We don't have the law yet. So we learn another teaching. There was a Tana, so a rabbi of the period before the Mishna was published, before it was closed, who recited Tanaitic teachings before Rava bar Rav Huna. So he's not a big enough Tana, a prominent enough Tana to be named here in the Talmud. He's just being used as it's like he was one of the students in the academy, but not a super distinguished one. But he was good at remembering teachings, right? So he would recite teachings of other Tanaim in front of the other students and teachers. And so he recited before Rava bar Rav Huna, and he said, this nameless Tana, he said, when we kill snakes and scorpions on Shabbos, the spirit of the pious is not pleased. Or the spirits of the pious, he said, let me just get the tense right, the syntax properly. One who kills snakes and scorpions on Shabbos, the spirit of the pious is not pleased with him. Unclear what the spirit of the pious means. Does it mean, the souls of our ancestors who lived before and are looking down at us from the world of souls? Does it mean some kind of inner, the living soul of people who are pious in this world and would look down on somebody who kills snakes and scorpions? He's not saying it's prohibited. He's saying it's not good to do. That the spirit of the pious is displeased with one who kills snakes and scorpions on Shabbos. He said this before Rava bar Rav Huna, Rava the son of Rav Huna. Rava the son of Rav Huna answered this nameless Tana, well, if you say that, if the spirit of the pious is displeased with one who kills snakes and scorpions on Shabbos, then the spirit of the sages is displeased with them, with the spirit of the pious, right? So he's saying that you may think that the pious don't like it because they're trying to show that they're pious, they're attached to the tradition, they love God, and they don't want to kill unnecessarily. And that's a beautiful thought. It's a nice thought. It's beautiful. It's admirable. But it's not wise, right? That's a little bit of loving kindness unchecked can produce a problem. And here Rava, the son of Rav Huna, is telling us, no, these animals are dangerous. And your spirit of piety might lead you to spare them. And then they kill a person, right? We'd rather not risk that a person gets killed and we kill this dangerous creature than bow to the pious and let it live, and let this dangerous creature live, and perhaps even in close proximity to innocent people who don't even know that it's there. So the wise thing, according to Rava, the son of Rav Huna, is kill the snake or the scorpion because it might kill people. But then the Gemara tells us that Rav Huna, and we just had a teaching from Rava, the son of Rav Huna, and now the Gemara says, but Rav Huna, right, his father, so the Gemara is saying to Rava, your father said when he saw a person killing a hornet on Shabbos, yeah, and are you done? Have you killed all the hornets? Right, because the hornet is very different. You can imagine if in a dwelling place, especially, I have friends who live in Simi Valley, in Calabasas, like in the hills, like their property is right up against places where scorpions and rattlesnakes could live, and they could easily wander into the private property and be a danger to his family. Now, a hornet could do the same thing. But what Rav Huna was saying is, well, if you kill one hornet, what have you really accomplished? Aren't there thousands of others right nearby? So, killing one doesn't really accomplish anything. And since it doesn't really accomplish anything, don't do it. That would seem to be the attitude of Rav Huna, the father of Rava. Now, it's funny that this came up on today's daf because a friend of mine posted today, this morning, on Facebook, does anyone know what this creature is that I found in my baby's bedroom, right? They have a baby daughter, and in the bedroom of the baby, they found a wasp, a pretty serious, scary-looking big wasp, and he caught it. Now, this was on Sunday. It's not a Shabbos question. And I said, wow, well, per today's daf, that's a dangerous creature. Now, it's in your daughter's bedroom. So while Rav Hun, I think, would say, hey, don't, if you're just outside and one wasp happened to come nearby, why kill that? You haven't really done anything. If there's a whole wasp nest nearby, you're not putting a dent in it. But if a wasp flies into a baby's bedroom, I think it has changed its status. You could definitely say it's now pursuing the humans. It doesn't belong there. It could really harm the baby. And so for sure we kill it. Certainly on a weekday we kill it. And then I would submit that the sages are saying here we would kill it on Shabbos as well. That's what this discussion is all about. Are we quite there yet? We have enough before. So before we get to the ruling where the sages ultimately came out in this debate, a few more teachings are going to be brought in. The sages said in a baraisa, if a snake or a scorpion, at any time, not just on Shabbos, but if a snake or a scorpion crosses my path, it's actually a message from heaven that, well, it crossed my path so that I would kill it, so that the opportunity was given to me to perform this public service to kill this dangerous creature, which is obviously coming in the, it crossed my path. So it's crossing the path of a human. If it crossed my path, it could cross the path of other humans. It's dangerous to all humans. So it was for the purpose that I should kill it. And the sages say, if I don't kill it, or if I didn't see it and then I saw it after when it was too late, well, so actually a miracle was performed for me that it came near to me and didn't kill me, right? And then, who was it? And Ula says, a miracle was performed for you if it came really close and hissed at you and it didn't bite you and moved on. Okay, so then the miracle was performed by you. If it was just somewhere nearby and you didn't kill it, it's not necessarily such a big message, right? But if you are a person, who feels confident enough to remove a dangerous creature from an area where it might hurt others, especially children, so then you might think to yourself, this opportunity came to me and I should step up and do what needs to be done to protect my community. And I think that's a good teaching actually for any time we see a problem in the world. If we encounter a problem and we're like, well, I know how to fix that, and it came to me, okay, I guess I have to step up and fix it. Heaven arranged for me to be the representative of humanity to fix this problem. If it comes your way and you know how to fix it, it was arranged for you so that you should fix it. Rabbi, and so we're not quite there yet. What is the halacha? Do we kill these animals? Do we trap them on Shabbos or not? Another teaching is brought down. Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana says, there was an incident where a snake fell into the study hall among the sages. And one of the students present, a Nabatean, killed it. And Rebbe, that's Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who edited the Mishna, Rebbe said one of its type killed it. Now the Gemara immediately asks, what did Rebbe mean by that? Was he being critical and negative and saying that somehow this person who killed the snake is like a snake and, he had the strength and cunning to kill the snake because he's like a snake? Or is he saying, and you can read the Hebrew this way, that this person considered that this snake could have hurt any of us and he was going to be the one to step up and kill it? It's a little unclear from the language, and so they don't come to a conclusion on how Rebbe feels about it. So we still don't have a ruling. Then we have another incident where some sages were visiting Rabbi Yanai. Presumably they were with him for Shabbos. They were in his courtyard. And maybe it was practical and maybe it was theoretical, but they asked him, may we kill snakes and scorpions on Shabbos? And Rabbi Yanai answered his guests, the sages that were visiting him, and presumably they were junior to him, and that's why they were asking him for his opinion. And he said, I kill hornets on Shabbos. And how much more do I kill snakes and scorpions? So he's saying snakes and scorpions are significantly more dangerous than hornets, but he'll even kill a hornet on Shabbos because it presents a danger to people. And how much more would he therefore kill snakes and scorpions? However, that is not a conclusive proof because Rabbi Yanai might not have meant that you would, for example, pick up a rock and crush its head or take a machete and chop it in half and kill it directly. What he might have meant is that you do something called treading innocently. So treading innocently, once again, we encounter this principle of we don't violate Shabbos and we don't even want to give the appearance of violating Shabbos because that might encourage others to think it's okay to violate Shabbos. So we're very careful about appearances. When there is spittle on the ground, like somebody spit on the ground, and people had dirt floors, and especially in courtyards, and it would be gross. And sometimes somebody would spit on the ground, or maybe there was an uncouth person who came over, and they spit on the ground. And you don't like it, right? We don't want to see the spit on the ground. It's a dirt floor, so we could just rub it into the ground. But you can't rub it into the ground because that's considered filling a hole, right? You're creating with that moisture, you're creating a little bit of mud, and it might fill in some irregularity in the ground. And it's a form of construction, right? Digging and filling in is something we don't do on Shabbos. So it's a technical thing, but we won't rub spit into the ground. However, we could just walk on it because we're walking from one place to another, and then effectively the spit just gets, mushed into the ground, and now it doesn't look like a gross blob of spit on the ground. This just kind of goes away. It's just a stain, not a blob. So that's called treading innocently, and that's permitted. So now the Gemara is saying, well, maybe when Rabbi Yanai said that he kills hornets and he kills scorpions and he kills snakes on Shabbos, maybe he meant that he would do that by treading innocently on them. He knows he's doing it, but he wouldn't take the machete and chop them in half. He'll just step on their head when he's going from one place to another, and if it kills them, it kills them. So, do we have an answer? Ultimately, the upshot of this whole debate was ruled upon in the Shulchan Aruch, and the halacha is any animal or creeping animal whose bite or sting poses a definite threat to human life may be killed on Shabbos. The Mishnah Berurah adds that this applies even if the creature is not pursuing a person or even if it is running away. So if it is a creature that is a definite threat to human life, and we have the capacity to kill it on Shabbos, we do kill it on Shabbos, even if it's not coming after us at the moment that we spot it. As for other harmful creatures, they're harmful. They might cause us pain. They might cause us to be sick. They might cause us some kind of damage, but it's not a definite threat to human life. With regard to harmful creatures, it is permitted to kill them, but only through treading innocently. We can step on them as if we're just walking from one place to another, and they get killed, but we don't go out of our way to visibly kill that animal in order to protect the community. And that is the halacha today. Okay, that's what I've got for us today. Let's look at questions. Neil says, if a young Jewish child does something prohibited on Shabbos, i.e. turns on the stove or turns the thermostat way up or down, can his Jewish parent correct the action or ask the young child to? Great question. It's a great question. I encountered a teaching, I think it was in a footnote in the Art Scroll, that said, if you dropped your key while you were walking, and maybe before Shabbos, and now it's Shabbos, so you can't pick it up and carry it in. There's no Erev. But it said some hold that you could take kids out to play in that area. And if they find the key and decide to bring it in of their own volition, so they weren't your agent and they're not obligated in the commandments, so they could do that, but you couldn't tell them to do it, right? So that would indicate that here, so the kid by himself and by mistake, because he didn't know better, turned the thermostat way up, or what was your other example? Or he turned the stove on. And now, you want to turn that off or you want to set it back to normal. But if you instruct the child to do it, he's your agent to do something that it's prohibited to do. Now, with the burner on the stove, depending on the stove, you could make the argument that this is a dangerous situation. Maybe it's a kind of stove in such a place that the flame could blow out, and it's a gas stove, and gas could become a danger, and maybe you could shut it off yourself. But having the child do it for you is not that great. If you say out loud what the problem is without instructing the child to do it, it would somehow be better. But since we're responsible for the child's actions, even though the child is not, we still are supposed to prevent the child from doing things which are prohibited to do on Shabbos. So it's problematic. It's not easy. And if it's a dangerous situation, then we deal with it as a dangerous situation. And if it's not, maybe we just have to put up with the discomfort. Ed Berg, but isn't trapping and killing two different things? Right. So from the original Mishnah, it was about trapping, and then our discussion went along to killing. Now, we do have the principle that if we need to desecrate Shabbos because of danger, let's minimize the desecration. Trapping and killing are separate labors, prohibited for different reasons. They're not the same. So is trapping somehow less of a violation of Shabbos than killing? I'm not sure that it is. I think that the reason that we kill these dangerous creatures is because they're a danger. And so trapping is actually subpar. It's not as good a solution as killing it, because that bowl could get kicked by mistake, and then the danger is back. Better, we should, just like we put out any kind of a fire that breaks out on Shabbos, which was a law that changed later in medieval times. Here it seems that the law was established pretty much from this debate, and at an earlier time, that we kill the creature. There were definitely, as we see here, Amoraim, rabbis of the period of the Gemara, who would kill these dangerous creatures, and I think that is the law. Christine says, can the wisdom ray creeping things be extended to viruses? Well, I'll tell you one thing, Christine. If I knew how to kill this virus, I'd do it on any day of the week. Of course, we don't know how to kill the virus. But perhaps your question is, can we desecrate Shabbos, to avoid endangering people with the virus? And, so it would have to be kind of a desecration that directly protects people from getting the virus. Like, we come upon someone, or, let's say somebody is, I don't know, somebody's walking by in a place where there's no Erev, they lost their mask broke, it might protect their life to bring them a mask. And even though we might have to carry it from a private domain to a public domain, I can't be sure, but it seems to me that, yeah, we would do that, because now, maybe we're saving a life by doing that. Is it definite enough of a save? That would be a debate that we could go back and forth. It seems to me like there's a good chance we could come out on the positive side of that. And Lynn says, would treading innocently imply the state of the heart, no despising the creature, just protecting human life? I mean, for sure, in all cases, we're doing this to save human life. We don't despise any creature. And we certainly have teachings elsewhere in the Talmud that every creature serves a purpose. And we would not kill any creature unnecessarily. We 100% put humans at a different level than the animal kingdom. Animals are not equal to people. People are more important and more holy than animals. But we have all kinds of laws that enjoin us to never inflict cruelty, certainly not unnecessary cruelty, on any animal. There's specific laws about unburdening an animal and feeding an animal before we feed ourselves. And every animal, every fly, every hornet, every pest serves a purpose. We just have a duty when they endanger us to protect our community from them. In terms of treading innocently, I think that's really more about the appearance of violating the Shabbos prohibition than anything else. But I do think that, when we freak out and like, oh my God, there's a cockroach, even let's say during the week, and we decide that we're going to kill that, we should take a step back and say, well, actually a cockroach is not dangerous. So do I really need to kill that? Why am I killing that? What is the purpose of the cockroach? And this is not for everybody. Some people are just disgusted by them. But it's not a bad idea to think, before taking any life, why is it here? And do I really need to take that life? And if the answer is no, so don't do it. And I think that there is where the heart really comes into it, and a heart that's subservient to our master who created everything for a reason. That's what I've got for us today. Thank you for joining me. This has been page 121 of Tractate Shabbos. And with God's help, we'll get together again tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific, more or less, to learn page